Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. I'm Howard64 in case you did not know. Today I decided to try and start some it's kind of like a new thing that I want to try doing. Basically the series is going to be called Why It's Important. It's kind of like questions that I've asked myself while mixing, things I wish people would have told me when I was mixing or when I first started out, summarized into small episodes. So episode 1, so for episode 1, I want to talk about something that's actually really important that I feel a lot of people don't really think about or know, and that's called gain staging. Gain staging isn't like a certain phase or a step in your mixing process, like, you know, some people will EQ, then compress, and then add effects, and they'll go to this instrument. It's not like that. Gain staging is kind of like a process you do the entire time that you're mixing. So what is gain staging? So gain staging, if you think in the context of recording, gain staging is your signal to noise ratio. So this means that when you are recording, your signal to noise is, think of like a linear bar. It's like a bar like this, and this is like their peaking meter where you would start distorting, and this is basically 0. So there is a spot in between these two bars that is optimal for your signal, which is like your guitar, your voice, your drums, and your noise, which is like, can be surmised as like white noise or static sound that you hear. Like if you take, like, say you take a track and you have it kind of silenced and you throw a compressor on, you crank it all the way up, that noise is what you're trying to suppress. So that is the signal to noise ratio there. There is a fine line because you can have too much signal, which will then cause distortion, and you can also have too much noise, which can be a result of your signal being too low. So that is where gain staging kind of comes in. That would be the first stage of gain staging. The second stage of gain staging comes in when you're doing like your mixing. So if you recorded a good signal to noise ratio, now you have to keep it constant while you're mixing. So like I said with the example with the compressor, if your compressor is on too high, you can either A, distort, or 2, introduce too much noise when, say, your signal stops. Like with a singer, like I said, as soon as they stop, your compressor is going to look for any type of noise or signal, and it's going to compress it and try to bring it up to that level. If your singer is no longer singing, that means your signal is now gone and all that's left is your noise. Like sometimes when you're mixing a track and you say, well, there's nothing going on here, why do I hear so much like sizzling? It's because you have a track where the noise is being brought up and it's coming through in your mix. The gain staging is also important because for me, I feel like gain staging is the fundamental of your mix. So think of it as like you're building a house, and before you ever build a house, depending on what state you live in, you have to build the bases first, or build the basement. And the stronger the base is, the stronger the house built on top of it will be. So let's actually get into this mix here. This is a mix for one of my band's songs. It's called Personal Space. It's on the new album, link in the description, all that stuff. If we take our mix now, which was probably going to sound abysmal. So most times, if you've ever been in the field of mixing, you would know that when you get a track or you get a file from somebody and they've laid out the mix for you, you're going to have all tracks 100%. Everything's going to be at 0. Nothing is going to be panned. I actually forgot to set all my pans. So now that we have everything zeroed out, this is how you would essentially receive a track if you were enlisting your services as some kind of mixing engineer. You are going to get all the tracks. They're all going to be set to 0. They're all going to have pans straight up the middle, or if they're stereo tracks, they're going to be set 100 and 100, like all the way to each side. That's just how it is. You have to deal with it. You'll get used to it. First things I do as soon as I get a session, and that's why I made this video, is set levels, set pans. Once you set those two things, if you don't have a good idea of where the mix is trying to go at that point, go to your client and tell them like, hey, I have this and this problem. Is there anything you want to address it with? Like, it's better to nip these problems in the butt early than to try and fix it and spend like 3 days working on just a snare tone and then realizing, oh, it's unsalvageable anyways. I understand there are people who are extremely difficult and they say,
Oh, my cousin recorded this with his iPhone, dog. This is the best sound ever.
and in which case, then yeah, you have to deal with what you're given. But at most times, having a good client mixer relationship, if you want to call it that, is going to be your best option. We'll listen to what everything sounds like together without everything on, and then we'll go through and actually start adjusting stuff. So this would be everything at 0. So if your ears don't hurt already, as you can see, everything was slammed. There is absolutely no clarity whatsoever, and I was actually hitting 6.3 when I have a +3 meter, so that's great. So we were clipping indefinitely. So what I always do is I come in and I always put on my bus EQ, which is this here. It's a HEQ by Waves. And then the second thing I like to do is I like to go in and put on my bus compressor, which is the SSL compressor. And I just like to do this because I like to at least have the feeling of my mix being glued together. So now that we have all that set and you've seen me do it, now let's go in and let's listen to drums. Alright, so I can already tell that for one, all my drum tracks put together is way too loud. Everything's too loud. So I'm gonna go ahead and kick out down, kick in up. Bring down spot cymbals a lot because we don't need spot cymbals to be that loud because we have the overheads going. And then I'm actually going to bring down a lot of this stuff as well. I have all my cymbals down. I'm going to actually bring down my room mics a bit just to hear it. Have our level mixing, and now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to actually go ahead and set pans. So basically panning is like where each source is going to be going. Everything is set so it's all at different levels. I mean, not at different levels, they're all in different positions, so it's not all panned up the middle, which will also significantly bring down our overhead room because we're kind of splitting the sound into 2 separate lanes rather than having all congest down one. So now our drums sound like this. Next thing we're gonna do is we're just gonna come over and we're gonna do our bass guitar. Bass, most of the times you're just gonna have it panned straight up the middle. I have the bass running into a B7K. It is it's a little pedal by Dark Glass, if you've ever heard of it. I think that's pretty good actually, just for a level and pan, because most times you're going to stick your bass straight up the middle anyways, and it sounds like the bass and the drums are at a good level with each other, so I'd say that's good. That's a wrap there. So we're going to have rhythms on this side and leads on this side. Oop. And we're going to go ahead and just hear what that sounds like. Alright, so I just realized that the toms are extremely loud. That's pretty good there. Next thing we're going to move on to is we're actually going to move on to the lead guitar. I mean, not the lead guitar, like the guitar that's doing like solo stuff. Alright, yeah, we're going to bring that one down just a little bit. So what we did was we took our levels, as you can see here, all our drums, we brought the levels down, we took care of the pans. Same thing for bass, brought levels down just to make it sound nice. Guitars, we brought levels down, and then we did the panning as well. Same with leads, same with the clean guitars, and we did not do anything with vocals. So let me reiterate, we're not doing vocals today. We are just going over the effects to see how well you can start off a mix just by changing your levels and your pan. That's the whole purpose of this gain staging. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to put everything back up to 0 again. I'm going to leave the compressor on, and I did not do anything with the EQ, as you can see here. I'm going to put it back at 0 so we can hear where we started from, and then I'm going to change it back so you can hear how big of a difference it makes just changing your levels and your pans. Remember that we are just trying to change our levels so that way everything sounds nice together as a base. We're not going for perfection off of just levels. This is all levels set to 0s. This is what you are starting with. So as you can hear, there's a huge presence in the guitars, which is to be normal. Guitars are wall sound. As I was peaking on my master level, as you can see there, and there was just a huge wash. There wasn't much definition. So now we listen to everything all together. We're going to listen to what it sounds like with all the leveling done together, and I'll try to adjust it so that way the gain matches on each one. So. So already you can hear such a huge difference. You can feel more power. Everything feels more unison and together. You can tell the clarity in what's being played. Right there, you can hear the lead. Everything seems present. Everything seems unified. The silence is a lot more pronounced because you don't have the low end flub pulling over again. And the thing that I really want to drive home for a lot of people is there's actually a low end breakdown at the very end of this song. And I want to show you how important it is to start with a good level. But Haunter 64, what are you trying to say? What do you mean? What was the whole point of this video? Mixing is a whole lot more than just let's get the best plugins, let's get the best instruments, let's get the best amps. A lot of stuff with mixing is very subtle details, noticing how little things can make a huge difference. When you're mixing, pay attention to your gain staging, pay attention to your leveling, because your leveling is going to matter a lot more than you think it will. Like I said, just going in and taking the extra 5 to 10 minutes to adjust my levels and adjust my pan over going in and just saying, all right, let's start with the kick drum and start putting this on there and start putting that on there. You can already tell a huge difference just from doing the leveling and panning. I sincerely hope that this was beneficial to you. I hope that you learned something from this. I'm sorry if I rambled a bit too much. Thank you guys for all the support you guys bring to the channel. You guys know all the links in the description, subscribe and all that stuff. You hear it from everybody. Thank you for stopping by. I will catch you later.